when I look at this Bucks team going forward, under Bud, a number of great regular seasons and some playoff disappointment outside of 2021. Of course, the last 2 seasons you can point to injuries, but they're in a position with their core group of guys back to challenge again for the NBA championship. And on DraftKings Sportsbook right now, they are at plus 330 to win the Eastern Conference. They got their win total at 52.5. That's at minus 110. I got them going over that. I'll tell you that right now. And Giannis for MVP, this is kind of what I wanted to talk about. We're not going to talk MVP. We said we're going to put a moratorium on it. But Giannis for MVP to start the season is at plus 550. Luka and Jokic ahead of him. Giannis is the one thing that I wanted to bring up before we get to Khris. When we talk about the Bucks, it starts with Giannis. We should acknowledge with Drew, Brooke, Khris all locked up on their contracts. It's an older group outside of Giannis. Those guys are all on the other side of 30. Khris will be 35 when his contract expires. Brooke is already there. Drew's approaching 35 now. So it is an older group, and you do wonder about how much their window is open, how long their window is going to be open.
Yeah.
And Giannis had some comments this summer to the New York Times. I just want to read them real quick. When asking about signing his extension or waiting a year, he said, look, the numbers wise, it doesn't make sense to do it this year, but next summer, it would make sense for both parties. Even then, I don't know. And this is the big part. I would not be the best version of myself if I don't know that everybody's on the same page, everybody's going for a championship, everybody's going to sacrifice time away from their family like I do. And if I don't feel that, I'm not signing. And one of the interesting things about the Bucks this offseason has been this transfer from Mark Lazary to Jimmy Haslam for his ownership stake, and Bud being out and then bringing in a new coach. So there is, we know this core, but there is some unknowns about this team.
Are they one of the sort of first examples of the second tax apron stuff coming into play in terms of them not being able to make any upgrades to this core? So they brought in Malik Beasley this summer, and then they brought back Brooke, obviously, but not much else. They lost Javon Carter, they lost Wesley Matthews. They haven't really hit in the draft the last couple of years, and so you're giving me a look.
I like the kid they picked last year.
Beauchamp?
Yeah, I like him a lot.
Okay, I mean, I just don't.
There's some talent there.
I don't know.
I'll
take your word for it.
I don't know the
enough.
intangibles.
Yeah.
There's some talent there.
Well, I guess my question is, like, you look at Denver, and we talked a ton about this last year, but you look about why they won, and obviously it's the stars, but then it's the Bruce Browns, it's Christian Brown, it's Jeff Green, it's all that. Who is that for them? Like, who are they bringing in?
Well, I thought last year it was Javon Carter, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I thought he was the guy that really helped them both defensively and offensively, had his best shooting season of his career. Look, I mean, it can be Grayson. It could potentially be Malik Beasley. The way Giannis has developed as such a willing passer, willing to bait defenses. The ball, when he sees a guy open, the ball doesn't stick. He's swinging that basketball. And so those guys are going to have opportunities. And you get into, again, I always think about this team is going to win a lot of games in the regular season if they're healthy. You get into the playoffs, and it comes down to some defensive matchups, but the way they're positioned with Drew on the perimeter, Khris on the perimeter, and Giannis and Brooke, if someone's attacking Grayson, look, I think there's schemes you can figure out to mitigate that. I think offensively, those guys could be the Alfreds, right? Where they swing a game in a 2-2 series because one of them hits 5 threes. So I think they have the supporting cast. To your question about the tax apron, I think it was a no-brainer to bring Brooke and Khris back because you still have 2 years until the second apron really comes into effect. And so to me, based on Giannis' comments, based on that, what we're talking about with the second apron, look, they probably have a 2-year window here, given the age of Brooke, Drew, and Khris. Like,
yeah,
it's a 2-year where you're like, you have 2 more years to try to win this thing. And anytime you have Giannis, we mentioned the other guys, Jokic, Luka, like, you got a chance in the NBA because those guys are so good.
So good. The stat I saw before we get to Khris, that when Lopez, Middleton, Drew, and Giannis were on the court last year, they were plus 11.3 per 100. Like it's very clear, and we talked about it a ton during the season last year. And then obviously in the playoffs, it's like no Giannis. I mean, that's
you look at last season, and the best way to describe it is it was disruptive. when you think about the last two seasons, the success in the regular season, the playoff failure, some of which due to health, as I mentioned. And you think about going into this year, you look around the landscape of the league, how teams reloaded, how teams reshuffled the deck. Denver, of course, the defending champs. Boston getting Porzingis in the East. What is your mindset? What do you think the Bucks have to be better at outside of health to get back to that championship level you were at in 2021?
Have to be playing our best basketball. For a lot of seasons, the last couple of seasons, we've been really good during the regular season. And for some reason, I won't say we struggle, but we've had some disappointments. I mean, and that's just the way I'll look at it. So it's just figuring out how to fine-tune things. I don't think we need to completely change the roster, completely change the way we play. Just need to fine-tune things.